Well, welcome to another edition of BizTalk Weekly. I'm your host, Greg Johnson. And today we have Paul Stewart joining us as a guest.
Hi, Greg.
Paul, nice to have you here. Thank you
Thank
for
you very
joining.
much for having me. Thank you.
Hey, Paul, could you take just a minute or two to give us a little introduction about yourself and your business?
Sure. My name is Paul Stewart. I am the founder and CEO of Ambry Technologies. I live in northern Minnesota and started we're based out of Cambridge, Minnesota, and I started the company back in 2016. I started the development of the company in 2016. We officially launched in 2018, and we develop software for the aviation aftermarket sector. It's a full end-to-end ERP and MRO vertical platform. We also have another product that does automated pricing and quoting for requests for quotes of aircraft parts and that functionality that plugs onto existing platforms. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Very cool. And again, how long have you had this business, Paul?
So we officially launched in 2018, January of 2018, but I had started the development of it uh, in 2016 and actually started the business plan probably in 2014. Yeah, it's been quite a long journey.
Was this your first step into entrepreneurship, or were you an entrepreneur before that?
Great question. I've always been entrepreneurial minded, and I tried a few things here and there, but the reality is that until you're ready to fully commit, um, you're just a entrepreneur. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you've got to really
I like
step
that.
in and make the whole commitment. And after my kids left the house and it was time. It was scary, but it was a full leap. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there some inspiration not only to become an entrepreneur, but to start this particular business? I mean, this seems like a pretty niche type
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. So prior to that, I had worked for uh, an aviation software company after I got out of the military, and um, worked there for about 7 years, and then I went to a parts trading company that was using that software and ended up working there for 17 years. So I really felt that I was on, and at the time I was considered a domain expert on the application and the
Mm.
company operations. And so it was something I knew, and it was something I was confident I could do better. Um, I was building up my network over the years in the industry and not really knowing what I was going to use that network for. So there's a lesson right there. Always network, even if you don't have any plans, because you just never know when you're going to call on that network, right?
That is
Uh,
great advice.
and so I just started building the business plan, and then started talking with people I knew to ask for funding and advice or anything. Just started sharing the business plan with them. And that led me to speaking with some pretty high profile technology people. And Barbara Bienfat, uh, who is the wife of a friend of mine, a brilliant person. And I believe she's the former chief innovation officer for Samsung, and she had some involvement at BlackBerry. She's the one who gave me the idea and for my first product. So I remember after that conversation on my way home, driving home, I was using an application called TripIt to manage my business trips.
I remember.
And yeah, and on the way home, I was at the intersection of I-35 and 94 coming home, and it hit me like a rock. I thought, I'm going to build TripIt for aviation. And by the way, I don't code. I don't actually write code.
Yeah.
Um, I used to back in the day, but I don't anymore. And so I got home that night and did some research, and I put my credit card down and hired a company that night. So that's kind of when you make the decision, you got to commit. There's no halfway. You're
Right.
either doing it or you're not. So yeah,
One of the things I find with entrepreneurs is there's a fair bit of risk involved.
hmm
And can you talk about a time, in your business where there was sort of this pivotal moment that um, you came across maybe a significant decision or sort of a fork in the road where you had to, make some key
yeah.
decision and how did it impact the business?
So I mean, there's been several of those over the years, but
I thought there would be.
the very first one, it's a bit of a funny story. I had engaged this company in India to start helping me develop the first product, and I had this project manager who ended up kind of saving the project. And I would get up I would come home from a full 8, 9 hour day, heading up operations at this company, and get online about 8, 9 o'clock at night. And I would work until about 4 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
And then get a couple hours of sleep. And I would go back to work the next day. And I did that for about 2 years during the development of this. And so I was talking with this project manager and I was telling him like, hey, when we get this up and running and you should come and work for me and leave that company behind and you could be my developer and everything. And so one day he sends me a message and he says, "Okay, Paul, I quit my job. I work for you now." And I was like, "Well, what? Yes, this is a little too soon." So now all of a sudden, out of the blue, I'm really committed because this developer is now relying on me to pay his salary. And so
Right.
I had to pay him out of my own paycheck that I was, earning on my day job, so to
Because
speak.
you were still working.
Right.
Yeah.
And that ended up running into, money problems. I leveraged credit cards. Uh, Obviously I was getting burned out. So the critical decision there was, what do I do? Do I abandon this because I can't afford it? Or do I try to get funding? And at the time, the company I was working for was being sold. And so I was with the president of the company, flying all over the country, entertaining potential buyers for the company I was working for at the time.
Hmm.
And one day on the way back, he and I started talking, and I was doing all of this on the side. Nobody knew it was being done.
No.
And I was doing it all on my own equipment because you never want to use employers' time or equipment or anything to do any of that stuff because if you do, they own it. Make no
Yeah.
mistake about that.
Yeah.
So I was
Exactly.
keeping it very, very separate. Long story short, it ended up that I ended up telling him about it, and he became an investor and essentially saved the project. He was able to give enough funding to keep the development going, and then we ended up launching alpha stage of the product in January of 2018, and then 6, 8 months later, the company that purchased my former employer, there was a second pivotal moment. Do I, do I now go full direction with this company I'm building, or do
Mhm.
I stay on board? Do I tell these new investors about it? And I didn't know how they would react, and so we ended up telling them about AHT, and they bought the company, and here we are today. So you had mentioned that it's risk. It's risk. Everything you do is risk, and if you are risk adverse, entrepreneurship is not for you.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to take educated, strategic risks every single day. And it's not just critical moments, it's every day you're taking a risk doing something.
And Paul, it's not just about risk, but it's also about the unknown. When I know when I was in a job, right, a W-2 job, certainly there were no guarantees, but you knew you were going to draw a paycheck the next 2 weeks,
Right.
and things were, yeah, there were things going on in your job that were, sometimes a little foggy, but you kind of knew what was going to come, right? Where I think in business ownership, boy, I mean, just look at the situation you just described of just these things that I'm sure you didn't see either one of them kind of coming down the road. Certainly not the developer quitting his job and saying, "Now I work for you." And
Yeah.
then here's somebody who you're working for and not really divulging sort of this side gig that you're starting, and he becomes your investor. I mean, those are two things you just couldn't have, I would assume, just couldn't have predicted.
No, no. And speaking of that too, some advice to anybody looking to start a business is absolutely know as much as you possibly can about the market, the industry, and the competition. But know that you can't tell when someone's building something in their garage.
Hmm.
And I thought I was going to be the first one to market to compete with these legacy systems that were out there. And within 24 months of me starting my company, six other products came out of the market. Everybody was doing the same thing as me at the same time, building stuff in their, in their garage too. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden, one after the other, they all just started popping up, and you can't predict that. And that then throws all your financial models and forecasts out the window. And it's you just can't predict it. But there's a really important lesson in there. I used to be the kind of guy that and I do hold a patent. I've even had some material published here and there. Um, but I used to be the kind of guy that would have ideas and I'd write them down on a notepad and everything and all of that, oh, if I could just get this patented and manufactured and sell it and that kind of stuff. Well, that's all great. And then, you go to the fabricator and you're like, okay, well, you got to sign an NDA because I don't want you telling anybody about this great idea I've got. Let me tell you something. I learned a long time ago that if you think you're the only one on this planet who's ever thought of this brilliant idea and there's nobody else out there or somebody's going to steal it, well, forget that. Forget all of that. Because if you have an idea, there's at least 100 other people that are thinking the exact same thing somewhere in the world. And of those 100, there's at least 25 that are actually already taking action on it and doing it. And of those 25, there's at least 10 that are going to actually follow through and probably take more action than you are with just your idea and the notepad. Right? So don't let idea protection and all of that stuff be a barrier to you actually doing something.
Yeah.
Action is what matters. That's all that matters. Action. The ideas don't matter if they have no action. The concepts, the discussions, all of that, the business plan, none of it matters if you don't have action. And by action, I mean swift, hard, everyday, relentless action. Period.
That is excellent advice. Yeah. And I think your business demonstrates that you've lived that. You've lived out every day like that. And that's a real compliment to you and what you're building. Tell me a little bit about, when you look at your business and you look at yourself as an entrepreneur, what do you, from a success standpoint, what's been the most significant achievement as a business owner? And are there lessons you can kind of take away from that achievement?
I think the biggest lesson is to somehow figure out how to maintain a work-life balance. Because
Hmm.
being an entrepreneur means that you're the first one up and the last one out the door, and the last one to get paid in many cases, right?
Yeah.
And you still got to maintain a good work-life balance. And I say that knowing I do not. And it can wear on your health, your mental state, everything, and you can sacrifice a lot. Um, and so this has made me realize the importance of the true value in one's life, and that is your family and your friends, right?
Yeah.
So that's certainly a lesson I've come away with on that. As far as the success goes, um, gosh, I mean, I don't really consider myself successful because I haven't achieved my goals. Um, and it's all success is in the eye of the beholder, I guess.
Yes, it is.
um, and maybe that in and of itself is a lesson. Like, don't ever let your guard down. If you achieve one goal, well, there's five others that you still should have laid out in front of you.
Yeah.
Um, so, so yeah, I mean, if success is being able to set your own hours, or approve your own day off, then I guess I'm successful.
Well, I think sometimes early entrepreneurs or individuals think about taking that leap into business ownership. They think about success as sort of like there's going to be a finish line or a point at which they've kind of reached the top of the peak. And I think really what I'm hearing from you is, that's not really the case. I mean, the journey kind of doesn't end. It just takes another form.
That's very true. I mean, this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my very long career. It's the hardest people management. It's the hardest client management. It's the hardest process management. I've learned a lot about business. It's been an extremely humbling experience for me as well. But I guess the only finish line is the exit, right? When you sell the
Mhm.
business or whatever. And for me, that's probably not going to happen. I mean, I don't own it anymore, largely. We're a wholly owned subsidiary of Air T now. Um, so I mean, it's a tough journey. You have to be careful when you're starting a business. You have to ask yourself, am I just doing nothing more than creating my own job? Because when you do that, if that's what you're going to do, then if you want to do it because you want to be the boss, well, ask yourself, really, honestly, candidly, is that really why you want to start a business? Because if you're now the boss, all the questions that you had and criticisms you had of your former bosses, now you have to be the one being criticized and
Yeah.
judged,
Yeah.
right? So if you're doing it just because you want you to be your own boss, then be honest with yourself. I myself did it because I felt that I could do a better job than many of the solutions that were out there. A lot of friends in this industry, and I felt that I just really wanted to help them. And I didn't do it for the money. I didn't do it for the freedom because I knew there wouldn't be freedom. And as hard as this is, it's still exactly what I want to do. I didn't want to go to my grave saying, I would have, I should have, I could have, what if? I wanted to check that off of my bucket list. And I have. Could I go and work for someone else again? Yeah, I probably could. Will I? I hope not.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
you have to be. My dad always told me, he said, look, if you want to be successful, find someone that's doing what you want to do, that's been doing it for at least 5, 10 years longer than you, and evaluate exactly what they did to get where they are. And you have to be willing to do every single thing that they've done, but you also have to be willing to make every sacrifice that they made to get there. And you have to be willing to have all of the same problems that they had to get there. And if you don't know what sacrifices or problems they have that went from start to where they are today, then you haven't done your homework enough to know what it takes to be in that position. You can't just look at somebody from the outside and say, "Oh, I wish I could do that." Why is he so successful and I'm not?
Right.
Well, there's one word, why. And that word is action. They
Yeah.
took action, and you're still pointing at them saying, why is he successful and I'm not?
Right. Right. And yet I think you raise a good point about, and you've said it a couple of times about you really have to put in the work. The action is the word that you're using.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to do this, it's an everyday, all the time thing. I mean, it, it's not just a 9 to 5 job as
No,
a business owner. You talked
no,
about it, right up at the start of the discussion where you were coming home from a 9 to 5 job and then starting your entrepreneurial role. It does take a lot of heavy lifting to be successful, and I'm glad you've kind of pointed folks in that direction and raised that issue. And it's not that, you want to scare anybody off in terms of business ownership, but you do want them going in with eyes open and really understanding what it's going to be like. Success isn't going to come tomorrow or next
right.
week. I mean, it's going to take time. Yeah.
I'll touch on this some more, but that actually brings up a point that I want to make. When you're starting a business, you have to be HR, finance, legal, the sales guy,
Sales,
the
yeah.
janitor. Um, there was many years even here in the office, I would go in and I was cleaning the bathroom. And I'm not going to ask my employees here to do that.
Mhm.
That's not their job. I wouldn't expect them to be their job. And I've always had an attitude that I will never ask anybody in this company to do something that I am not willing or able to do myself. And but the point I want to make is that in today's day and age with AI, it is an incredible advantage to starting any business. It can be a disadvantage too. But with AI, you can get professional results with just a clever prompt, full on marketing materials, logos. Like all you have to do is be able to articulate and describe it well, and it'll produce what you want. And so I never had that when I started. And I just think of even my business plan was 53 pages long. It took me a year to develop that and all the research and everything else. Had I had AI, I could have done it in 2 days, tops. And if people are not thinking about AI incorporation into their business, I don't care if you're going to do an excavating company or you're going to build the next, business software platform. There is a definite role for AI in anybody's business. And make no mistake about it, if you are not paying attention to it, you will be left behind.
So, Paul, just maybe expand on that a little bit, because there's no doubt. I mean, every time you turn the page on something, you're reading about AI, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, it's in our world and it's not going away. And again, whether you talk about it in terms of your business or just more in a general standpoint, but what would you advise kind of that new business owner when it comes to AI? What kind of actions would you lay out for them to take or think about as they're building their business? Not an they're not everyone's building an AI business. They're building a business, and how can they utilize AI?
So the first thing you need to do is separate all of the chatter and hype out there that you see on social media about AI and how, oh, I can build a AI business and get rich quick, right? That's nothing more than a get rich quick scheme relabeled from years ago, right?
Right.
But I'll give some examples of how, as a technology company, we use AI, but also just as a general company and how we use AI internally. So our
Right.
products, we were the first company to ever incorporate, at least in the aviation sector, to ever incorporate AI technology to automatically read incoming emails, parse the information out of the email, the unstructured human created email, grab the appropriate information out of it, and then stage it in a way that you can make it actually actionable. That's actually one of our patents is this methodology for that structured um, uh, email parsing. So that's an example of how we as a technology company are deploying AI inside the business software, making somebody's life easier without additional actions or interactions with the software system. Now, if you're not a technical company, that's fine. You don't have to be. You don't have to know anything about, you know, just about any topic really, because that's the beauty of AI. LLM stands for large language model, right? And AI, at least as it is today, is nothing more than a big giant engine that predicts the next word in a sentence. And so it builds on itself to then create the content, so forth, right? And it's getting smarter and smarter all the time. It's getting
Right.
better and more robust. So here's some examples of how we use AI internally. And I'm not going to talk about our development environment because we're a software company,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming that most people are going to be, building non-technology companies.
Right.
For example, we took our forecast and we wanted to do some contingency planning with the Iran war going on and oil prices going up and stuff. Within a couple of hours, we were able to upload our financials and create two very comprehensive, robust scenarios of our financial plan, our portfolio, and um, you know cost changes and things like that, just by uploading our spreadsheet, explaining the situation, explaining what we uploaded, and explaining what we wanted out. And it took about 40 minutes, and we had something that would have taken us 2 weeks normally to build. That's one example. Another example is I took our contracts. We have two different contracts. One's called maintenance services agreement, and the other one is called software licensing agreement. I uploaded those two documents into our AI account that we use, actually mine. And all I said was, here's the list of departments in my company. I want you to summarize the responsibilities, the contractual responsibilities of these agreements by department. 30 seconds later, it wrapped up a beautiful 3 or 4 page summary by department, development, implementation, training, support, and it outlined every single bullet inside of all of our contracts for exactly, what our support times were, what our response time obligations were, what our uptime. It read the contracts and gave that out to me. That's just a couple of examples of how you
Yeah.
can take something that normally takes days or weeks to produce, and with a proper prompt, you can upload and do anything. There is more than enough training out there on YouTube, but I would suggest that you use LinkedIn Learning. We use that a lot because it's quality structured content, and you can get any topic you want, from business to how to use Microsoft Word. It doesn't matter. LinkedIn Learning is a fantastic resource for anybody that wants answers on anything, and become that sponge to absorb that information. And if you don't know what somebody says something, and you don't know what the term means, like what is GDPR or whatever, man, take a mental note of it. And as soon as you can, you Google it, or you look at, Chat GPT or whatever, and you figure out that answer, because you need to learn the language of business that you're going to, in the world that you're going to be interacting with, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
AI can help you do that.
Well, I love those examples you gave because they're not specific to your company. Everybody's got financial statement challenges, right?
Yeah.
Most companies have contracts or some kind of agreements that dictate a lot of how they do business. And I love that example you used of the contracts because sometimes there's so much language in there that we just don't comprehend, as
Well,
just
here's two more
non
examples. I spent 4 days rewriting the job positions for every single position in our company with an appendix of KPIs for each position. And it took me about 4 days, only because I didn't have the time to sit down and do it. But I went through and created 23 different job positions over the course of 4 days, full, complete responsibilities, education, everything. And I didn't upload anything. I just went in there and said, hey, here's a general description of the job. This is my industry. Give me a job description. And then once I had the first one and I liked it, I then uploaded that back into the chat and said, okay, use this format to now build this job description. And after two of them, it knew exactly who we were and it knew exactly what I was after. It was fantastic. I mean,
Yeah,
unbelievable.
that ability to kind of, it's almost like building blocks, right? Because as you
Mhm.
lay one layer, another one's created. From those two layers, a third one is created, and it gets better and better as you move kind of along that path when you're feeding it sort of that information, and now it's picking up on what it is that you're really trying to get at.
So
Um,
here's three different things. If somebody's starting a new business, these are three, maybe four things that I would do if I was in their position right now.
Great. I was just going to ask you
Number
that.
one, I would go to LinkedIn Learning, and I would look at courses on AI and just to learn how to interact with AI. You don't need to know how it's made, how it worked, none of that stuff. Just teach me how to prompt AI effectively. That's number
Yeah.
one. The first thing I would do is I would ask AI to help me build a business plan, and I would get a business plan structure. The next thing I would do is I would tell AI to help me create a marketing strategy and brand my business. Tell it what it is. I'm a lawn care service company. I'm a whatever, and I like the color purple, right? And because I like the Vikings. So help me create a logo and a brand. It'll do all of that for you. And this is what people would pay tens of thousands of dollars only 2 years ago to do, right?
Right.
And then the last thing I would do is I would start asking AI about software to run my business. What people don't realize is that you can actually build your own software now. So if you're reasonably tech savvy, you could actually take an immediate competitive advantage over anybody else in the market in your business by creating custom mobile apps for your customers that could give them tracking information on where you are. I'm coming to replace your windshield, whatever, right? These are mobile apps and technology platforms that companies have spent billions of dollars developing that somebody now can go into AI and create themselves for their own little company. So that's exactly what I would do today if I was starting a new business. Those are the steps that I would take.
You know what's really cool about those, Paul, is that, and again, not that we're encouraging everyone to go into business for themselves, but anyone can do those three things that you just listed there, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you've got sort of a business idea, a concept, as you said before, maybe you're working for somebody and you feel like, you can do this better. What great ideas for just being able to kind of launch a business without having to make this huge investment into things like marketing, a business plan, which, I mean, you said your business plan took, a year to write. Think about accelerating that process to a few minutes.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. I always tell people sort of, half jokingly that if they ask me what I do, I tell them I say I'm a professional excuse remover. I remove excuses for people to not do things. And then if you remove enough excuses, you end up getting down to the root cause of any particular issue. And so when I hear people, they come to me frequently and, oh, what do you think about this idea? Or what do you think about that idea? Or, I want to start my own business or whatever. It still comes down to action. And I always tell them, stop getting ready to get ready.
Yeah.
Just do it. Like commit and do it. Because until you actually make that mental switch up here, and I know for a fact because I was in that position, I had many ideas over the years and I kind of half-heartedly played with them and stuff. And every time I'd suddenly see somebody else pop up with that business. And I'm like, God, and they were successful. had I just committed,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
stop getting ready to get ready. The worst enemy is no action at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? Well, Paul, I'm so thankful for you to come on the program. This was really good. This was really good. I think our discussion on AI was really intriguing, and I hope that catches some folks' eyes and ears. So, again, thank you for coming on the show, and I look forward to hearing more about you and your business as time progresses.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. And good luck to everybody out there who's trying to start a business.